loyalty,
duty,
respect,
selfless service, honor,
integrity,
and personal courage.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Staff Sergeant Noto with the United States Army National Guard. We're down here right now at Edge Media Studios in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm here with my co-host, Staff Sergeant Greg Johnson and Sergeant First Class Joshua Stevens, and our guest today, the Deputy Commander of the Indiana Army National Guard Recruiting and Retention Battalion, Major Alain Samples. Ma'am, thank you so much for coming on the show with us today. We really appreciate it. Thank you for getting some time out of your calendar to come join us and tell us a little bit about your Army story. We really appreciate that, ma'am.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We definitely have a lot of questions to get to. I know Sergeant Johnson, he's been itching to ask his first question. If you want to just jump right into it.
Just itching.
Yeah. Thanks, ma'am.
So exciting.
The first question is just pretty basic. I would like for you to just tell us how you came to the decision to join the Indiana Army National Guard.
Okay. Well, I'll try to remember. It was 23 years ago. So been a lot going on since then. But the reality is I was 19 when I joined, and I was a very, very unsuccessful teenager. To the extent that I never graduated from high school because I was expelled.
Oh.
I went on to 2 different colleges to try and make up for that. I was not ready to be in those colleges, and I also was asked to leave both of those colleges.
Sounds like my story.
So I was having a pretty rough time in life and really looking for a way to get a win, honestly. So after I left the second college, I had actually met some adults in my life that were friends with my family and some community leaders, and they had recommended that I look at joining the Indiana National Guard. To be honest with you, I had no idea what that was. It just wasn't something that I was all that familiar with. But my childhood dream was, and this, don't laugh, but I had always wanted to be Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs. That was...
Oh, okay.
That's interesting.
Classic.
That was
I've heard that before.
not like the actress. Like I wanted her job.
Right.
Just to be clear.
Understandable.
Yeah, I wanted to do that. So those guys kind of knowing that, they said, hey, this might be a good thing. I wanted to be an MP. Just got to looking at it and seemed like the right thing. There were so many educational benefits. And of course, I had accumulated a little debt from my failed college experiences.
Yes.
So it was nice, the idea that I might get some payback for that and then paying for the rest of my school and a resume builder.
Yeah.
So I took that leap. I did not get an MP slot. I was not qualified for that for some reason, but what I did join was a motor transport operator. Joined as an
me
88
too.
Mike.
There we
So
go. There we go.
got to drive those big trucks, and that was it. And that's
Awesome.
what happened.
So once you made that decision to join the Guard, was your family supportive?
They were very supportive. Pretty sure they were supportive of that point at anything that got me
Positive at this point.
that got me out of the house and got me doing something well intended. So yeah, they were absolutely supportive. I have some ancestors and family members that had been military before. Nobody had been in the National Guard. But I'm actually a daughter of the American Revolution, so
that's
yes,
cool.
I feel
That's
very
pretty cool.
proud of that.
Yeah.
So we had a history of it, and it was definitely something my family supported me doing.
Cool. What were any of those family members or relatives that had served before? Were any of them a specific major influence on your decision?
Absolutely. My grandfather, so my mom's mom, retired Colonel Ivan D. Brown. He retired from the Air Force. He was a C-130 pilot.
Oh, that's really
Yeah,
cool.
flew in Vietnam.
Wow.
And he had gotten out by the time I was probably 10, but I remember seeing him in uniform, and he was very methodical and very organized guy, and I appreciated that about him.
Cool. Those are really great answers. Thank you, ma'am. Sergeant Stevens, you can go ahead.
I have a question, ma'am.
Sure.
So you've been all over the state and probably all types of roles. What's your most impactful role, or what's taken away from, like, what is the one that's you're like, I wish I could have more of that, or wish I could, what was your favorite role?
Well, I'm gonna give you the answer that most officers would give you, I think.
Okay. Give us that answer, and then give us the real answer.
Okay. So they're both kind of. So I mean that in 2 ways. One, I'm going to give you the position most officers would give you, but I'm also going to give you a typical officer answer, whereas I can't make a decision, and I'm just going to give you 2.
Okay.
So the first answer to that is I had the opportunity to be a company commander of Charlie Company 137th, which is the assault helicopter company out in Shelbyville.
Okay.
And as far as I know, I'm the first female that ever commanded that company. And I felt really proud to do that. But I had, Blackhawks and some support staff as well, a lot of aviators. And it was a really, really incredible opportunity to lead people of that caliber. Okay. And it really helped me grow as a person. 10 years later, I look back and think, wow, I really could have done a lot better if I'd known what I know now. It could have been a better commander, but it was a really great experience, and I really looked forward to every day that I got to do that. So that's the, and I think most officers would tell you their company command experience is their most important. But really, in addition to that, at the time I did that, I was mostly a part-time soldier, and shortly after that, I joined the AGR system, became a full-time soldier. In order to do that, I actually had to give up being an aviator and become an engineer. So that was a really hard decision for me to do that. But that position, where I was the senior full-timer and S3 out of the 113th Engineer Battalion in Gary, that is where I learned the most out of anything, and really got exposed to how we operate as an organization and came to understand that very well.
Awesome.
So you just brought up something that I do want to ask you. So you mentioned senior full-timer. What does that mean, ma'am?
What does that mean? Well, it means that everything falls on you, basically.
No.
Broad shoulder.
No, I mean, in the short answer is that it means you are the most senior ranking person that exists at a certain level of an organization. So for me, that was a battalion, and typically it means you also run an armory, which is actually a really interesting thing because when you look at the difference between the National Guard and the active duty, especially our full-time force, the skills that you develop as full-time in the National Guard are very different than the skills that you develop as an active duty soldier.
Absolutely.
I'd concur.
And so I did things like I ran the armory, so I rented it out, and I had to have it cleaned. I had the maintenance. It was essentially another business that you have to run on your own. And in addition to that, I had 22 full-time people that worked underneath me, scattered throughout the state, all the way down to Jennings County, and I was up in Lake County. So yeah, it's a very important position, I think, and as a AGR soldier, as an officer, it relates to kind of what a readiness NCO does in terms of it being one of the hardest positions that you do as a full-timer.
So even though the traditional National Guardsman is typically 39 days a year, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer, even though as enlisted or officer, there are full-time opportunities available throughout the state and the world. And this is a totally different question, and I'm very happy to ask it. Tell us what it was like being a pilot. You were a UH-60 pilot, right, ma'am?
I was a UH-60 pilot. Yes, I did that for 10 years.
What was that like? Like that I've flown in the back of 60s and 72s, and it's an amazing experience. But what's it like being in the front, in that cockpit?
Well, I mean, it's nothing short of amazing. That's, I've certainly been accused of being an adrenaline junkie before, and that definitely fits the bill for it. But I also, interesting fact, I was kind of scared of heights and scared of flying before I became a pilot.
Really?
I was. I mean, the first day of flying got me over it pretty quick, but there's something about being in control and being the one that understands the aircraft and understands its limitations that fear just kind of goes away. I still don't like to ride in the back. No matter how much I trust and know the guy in the front, I'm not a fan of being in the back. But being up front, especially as an Army pilot, because helicopters, I mean, I've never flown fixed wing, so I shouldn't knock them, because I'm sure that's hard too. But getting to fly at treetop level, 100 knots
cool.
at treetop level in the dark, it's quite the adrenaline rush.
What's flight school like?
Long.
Well,
long, but
again, let's keep in mind for anyone out there considering going to flight school that my experience is 15 years old. So it has changed on pretty drastically, I think, since I went. But the basics of it are still there. It is a lot of memorization, really. But I learned things not really knowing anything about aviation before I went there that I had no anticipation of. For instance, I can tell you all about the weather.
Fair.
That makes sense.
I mean, you really learn really pointed things about the weather and how to tell, what's going on with it and whether or not you should fly in it. I learned, just all kinds of aerodynamics and a lot of math. So it was a brain buster in a lot of ways, but mostly it's memorization and confidence, really.
Is flying something that you miss then, ma'am? Safe to assume that flying is something you miss?
Yes, I would say yes and no. There in a way. So I was a pilot for a total of 10 years, and I really accomplished everything that I wanted to accomplish. So I got to be pilot in command. I got to run to be a commander of a company. I went to Iraq and I flew over Baghdad and did all those scary things, but also really awesome things. Got to be a part of some missions that were impactful. It was something that I really like to be the best at the things that I do. And I had so much going on as a leader and all these other things. And really, if you want to be that perfect, awesome pilot, you should really more lean towards a warrant officer side, right? Because that's all that they do. And they become those experts and they get to be the top of their craft.
Right.
And the more rank I got, the more I just realized, I'm probably not going to be the best at this. And I'd rather go do something that I can put my full energy into. So do I miss it? Sure. Some days I'm out at Atterbury and I see a Black Hawk fly by across those trees, and a part of me is very, very sad for a second.
Those rotor blades.
Yeah, and I miss the people. They're an interesting bunch of people. Those aviators.
One of a kind.
Oh yeah, I worked for a year. They're very unique people.
Yeah.
So I'd say I'm kind of going off base a little bit here. So I'd say being a pilot is one of those jobs that you can apply the soft skills that you learn to basically everything you do. You're making like split second decisions. You're having to be super knowledgeable. You can't make a mistake up there.
Ideally not.
Yeah. So if this answer to this question is yes, please elaborate. Do you find yourself using those soft skills that you learned as a pilot as a deputy commander of the RRB?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question because I've never really thought about it like that. But I guess the short answer is yes. I never really sat down and done that tracing from I must have learned this as a pilot and now that I'm here. But absolutely, I mean, being at the RRB is a very challenging position, and it moves so quickly, and the environment changes very quickly. So I'd say it's very possible that being in the cockpit prepared me for some of the skills that I needed to do this position, and just generally as a leader, it builds a confidence in you that you have to come to the conclusion that the decision you make is the right one, and you have to go with it.
Absolutely.
When you're, at that safety concern level.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. It probably does apply across the board, yeah.
And you made a great point that the RRB changes every day.
Every day.
Recruiting
Literally every day.
Every day.
Things are always changing on the fly, and you're kind of having to fly by the seat of your pants, if you will.
Hey.
Like that? Hey. But so you brought up a great point. You're having to do those things in when you're flying a helicopter, you're having to adjust your plan consistently as things change in front of you, and that, like you said, has prepared you to be the RRB deputy commander because you're seeing these things change right in front of your eyes and you're just rolling with it. So I think that was a really good comparison.
That's a good parallel, yeah.
Okay. I want to switch some gears here a little bit, ma'am. So you are an owner investor of a privately owned business, correct?
Yes and no. I am. I have been. Actually, I've had several businesses during my time in the National Guard. Because this job is particularly challenging.
Sure.
And actually my last couple positions in the National Guard have been fairly time consuming.
Right.
They've kind of gone to the back burner, but yes.
So those jobs or those owned businesses, what roles did you play in those? Like what did you do for those specific jobs?
So I've had two different businesses that I owned with my mom. My mom is my best friend on the face of the earth, and we've always worked well together. And I was we had two OSHA consulting businesses.
Okay.
Ooh. So we spent a lot of time in manufacturing. Shameless plug for the safety firm. My mom's still running that.
Yeah.
No, we spent a lot of time in manufacturing and construction sites, and we basically would be their safety person.
Is
sort
that
of
kind of like
outsource.
industrial hygienist, or is that?
It's so. The industrial hygienist part can be a piece of it.
Okay.
That's a very special skill. I was more of a consultant in terms of, hazard communications, confined space, and lockout, tag out, those types of things. And I would write safety programs, and I did a lot of teaching and instructing. That was probably my favorite part of that. Those opportunities. But I traveled all over the country and did it for many different businesses.
Okay.
that's two of them. My family also owned a restaurant for a short period of time up in Noblesville. That was probably one of my favorites. I had a kind of a backseat role in that one. And then most recently, my mom and I together, again, we had a real estate investment business where we flipped a few houses, and that's the one that I'll probably pick back up when I leave this wonderful organization and need something to do.
So you like to stay busy, is what you're
I love to stay busy.
Sounds like you have no free time.
How did you? That's a great follow-up, Greg. How did you balance all that? So you have businesses here and there, and you have this National Guard career. I know you already said, hey, I kind of had to step away because of the national, because RRB is very busy. In the heat of it, how did you balance all that?
Well, so a lot of the businesses that I own were when I was an M-Day soldier and only serving part-time. So in that sense, it was great. It's just like any other job. The first couple of years of being full-time, I continued to manage my businesses, and I mean, everything comes down to organization, you know, and it really comes down to the people that you surround yourself with and who you're able to get to help you out.
Right.
So, I mean, it's like that, you know, in the guard job as well. It's just all about making sure that you got the right people in the right positions. And I tried really hard to keep it going for a while. But as I said earlier, I like to be good at things that I do. And I felt like that one, particularly since it was impacting my wallet, maybe I should be really good at that.
That's fair.
So, yeah. So it's tough. And I would honestly say maybe there were times I did not do it well.
Okay.
That's fair, though. But there was such a diversity, ma'am, in the businesses you owned. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that the leadership skills that you learned and you gained from service in the Army National Guard, both because you were enlisted, correct? You were enlisted before you went officer.
I was enlisted for 4 years.
So that enlisted service and that eventually commissioned officer service, those leadership skills, did that help you with your small business?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
That's just, I mean, I know a lot of people do use the National Guard to gain those leadership skills, and it's amazing to see that's exactly what you did.
Yeah. Can I just add to that?
Of course.
Yes, the skills, obviously. I mean, and not just from your time on the job in the National Guard, but also the amazing education that you're offered, generally free of charge.
Right.
So a lot of the Army schools that I've been to have just been really helpful in learning those leadership skills. But aside from that, it also gave me a credibility with an audience, especially in the industries I was working in, manufacturing, construction. You know, a lot of times, you know, I'm 5'4", and I walk onto a job site or I walk into a facility, and their immediate reaction is, "What could you possibly have to tell me?" You know,
right?
You know, and I started doing this when I was in my early 20s, and I know I still look like I'm in my early 20s now.
For sure.
But then I looked about 12, and it helped a lot when the first thing out of my mouth was, "Hey, I'm an officer in the Army National Guard." And that really built an immediate credibility with my audience.
And I fly.
I forgot to tell you.
How did you make the decision? How did you make the decision to become a pilot? Of all things in the National Guard, how did you make that decision?
Well, it was a series of events. So the first was I went down to JRTC in Louisiana as an enlisted soldier.
Okay.
That is the worst 4 weeks of
it was not a great time, but and it was really hot. I spent a lot of time driving. I was driving the big semi-type trucks at that point, doing a lot of deliveries. And I will never forget the day I delivered onto the airfield at Fort Polk. And I'm just sweating. I haven't had a shower in who knows how long, and everything is just, please get me out of here. And I roll onto the airfield, and I look over, and there's a tent on the airfield. And underneath that tent are a bunch of what I assume to be soldiers. They were in uniform. Flight suits, actually.
Yeah.
And they're sitting in chairs with their feet propped up on the coolers.
Yeah.
And,
aviators.
Yeah. And I mean, I assume, now I know that they were taking a 2-hour break before they had their next big flight.
Right.
I understand that now. But at the time, all I could think was, man, I chose the wrong job.
Oh, yeah.
So I kind of had that in the back of my head. I went to officer candidate school, and officer candidate school is a really neat thing. They give you, as a guard soldier, they give you this opportunity to say, hey, here's a list of all the possible branches you could do. And it's everything from admin to transportation on up, into aviation. And it had never really occurred to me that it was something I could just go do. So that combined with my grandfather's legacy, being a pilot, and they said, hey, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, obviously I want to go be a pilot.
Right.
So it just kind of worked out that way. And it happened to be at the time the state was getting all their new Blackhawks, and it was just a good time to go to flight school. So
What was OCS like?
So I did the state OCS program.
I was going to ask you if you did state OCS or not.
Yes.
I was going to
Yeah, each program is tailored towards what's best for that individual.
Right.
In retrospect, I probably, if had to do it again, I would have chosen the accelerated or the federal OCS program because I just like to get things done and get them over with.
Right.
But instead, I did the state OCS program, and so it was 18 months basically, 2 weeks of 2 summers. I think we did Minnesota once and Fort Lewis, Washington for the other 2, and then the rest were just drill weekends. The great thing about the state OCS is because it's a tough program. It's a little kind of back to basic training in the way that they treat you, and getting the motivation to go do that on a Friday and be treated like that all weekend was tough. But at the same time, I always knew there's nothing I can't survive for 3 days. It's 3 days, and then I'm going to go home, and it's going to be over. So
I thought the exact same thing. I used to be an instructor at OCS, and I was like, how do these people show up on Friday, and it's basic training for 3 days, and then they go home, and then they do it all over again next month. It's got to have that. You've got to have that mentality.
It is, but in a weird way, it kind of trains you for how your career as an officer is going to be. Just extreme, and I'm sure it's that way on the NCO side too. Just extreme highs and lows, and constant like having to adjust your attitude and mentality, and it prepared you for that.
That's awesome.
So, you are a major in the Indiana National Guard, and within our battalion, you are the second highest ranking person and the highest ranking female. Can you tell us what it's like being the highest ranking female in a battalion that is largely full of men?
Well, to be honest, that's how it's been most of my career.
Yeah.
It would be really great if we had more females in this organization, and luckily we've opened up so many more opportunities for the females here. I would be sitting here an infantry soldier right now if that had been an option for me at that time. Wouldn't make that choice now, and I'm glad the path I chose. But yeah, so it can be a challenge, I think our organization has really come a very long way in how we treat females and how they're seen. But the reality of that situation is that you have to be on the top of your game to be able to manage that, because one female speaks for all.
Yeah, for sure.
And I kind of wish it wasn't that way at the same time. But then again, I'm a person that likes a lot of pressure, and I like knowing that I can have that kind of influence. And we have of course other females in the battalion, and I think it's good for them to see a leader that
for sure
looks like them and probably don't act like them. I'm a little crazier than most of them, I think. But
but that last comment kind of leads to the second part of the question. Do you, as the highest ranking female in the battalion, do you feel a sense of obligation to the junior females to be like the example that, hey, female soldiers can be successful, be leaders, be in charge, and make decisions? Do you feel that sense of obligation?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And I think I think all females in leadership positions have that.
Yeah.
We kind of have to carry that torch, and luckily I've had some really great female mentors, some that are still in the organization. I'll give a shout out to Colonel Kathy Eakin right now.
Yeah,
who's
awesome. She is awesome.
Really has been a mentor of mine for a long time. But yeah, you definitely feel that obligation. But at the same time, I would really like to also be that mentor for the male soldiers in the organization.
Yeah, right.
I'd really like to at some point. Obviously, I'm not going to never be seen as a female. That's not the point. I'm proud. I'm proud to be that. But I would love it if they just saw me as a leader.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we're really moving in that direction to make that possible.
And that makes sense that you would want to be that mentor to male soldiers, because that conversation has to be had.
Absolutely.
Right.
I think we all know that, hey, females are in the same positions as males now. She's in charge of all 3 of us. She outranks us, but it needs to be said. And I think getting to that point where you can have male junior leaders that you mentor would help the National Guard to continue progressing in the military in general.
No, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so armed with all of your knowledge and your experience from, you said 23 years?
23 years. As of this week, actually, June 11th, 23rd anniversary. Thank you.
So if you were to talk to a group of high school seniors or juniors or college seniors and juniors that maybe were thinking about joining military service, but they still had doubts, what would you tell them?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm a sitting example of if you need a win, it can happen in the Army National
Right,
Guard.
yeah,
for sure.
So
New slogan.
Yeah, so if you need a win, so I'm sure there would be people in that group that dealt with that, and I would want to encourage them in the sense of what you can get out of this opportunity. Because the reality is the things that I have garnered from this weren't things I knew I needed.
Right.
At that point in my life, as I was on the fence, as a 19-year-old kid going, is this something I want to do? All I really thought was, well, I would love the college benefits and it's going to build my
Right.
resume. And all those things are true. But what I didn't know is the resilience that it was going
Right.
to teach me, the kind of people that it was going to, put in my life
Right.
and the opportunities that I was, I've traveled the entire world because of the Army National Guard. I've traveled the state. There's not a state probably in the entire country where I couldn't go and say, hey, I know somebody because I went to a school with them or I deployed
Right.
with them or, something like that. And it's those kinds of things that I think you don't, necessarily realize. So I would tell them, go for it, do it. Because you know what, you can always change your mind. You don't have to be a lifer.
Yeah.
I didn't think I
Right.
was going to be a lifer.
I didn't either.
I didn't.
I'm doing
Yeah, no.
6. I'm getting
Same.
out.
Yeah.
20 years later, I'm still
Yeah,
here.
and there have been moments all along my career where civilian opportunities presented themselves, and I thought, okay, now's the point that I'm going to get out, and I stuck with it and stayed in, and I'm very glad I did. I mean, the opportunities that exist in the Army National Guard are far beyond anything we can put on paper, and I hope people realize that.
That
That's
is
true.
so amazing. What are some of the unique experiences you've had as a guardsman?
Well, some of them are specific to Indiana. For example, we have a state partnership program that exists with other countries. I don't know how many people realize that. So
Slovakia, right?
Slovakia is our main one. We've had them for years, and Niger.
Niger.
Yeah.
New.
So you get a lot of opportunities to spend time with those. I've been to Slovakia, I think, 7 times.
That's so cool.
And,
Wow.
It's 7 more times than I've been.
Yeah, same.
really, it's a really great country and really great people, and just to get an opportunity to really get intertwined with another country and do that, it's great. And of course, there are deployments, and I think the civilian population is scared. Most of I talk to, they think, oh, I could never go do that,
Right.
But man, it's not as hard as I think it is, and
No.
it's been really good opportunities. The other things that have been really cool about being a Guard soldier, though, is how the big we are in our communities and
Yeah.
how much our communities
Right, for
support
sure.
us. And because of that, a lot of the opportunities we get, especially being Indiana, where there's racing and all this stuff,
Oh, yeah.
a lot of the opportunities we get come because our communities want to honor and thank us. And I've gotten to ride in the back of an Indy car around the IndyCar track.
That's cool.
Wow.
That was one of the coolest moments of my life.
Sure.
That's
Yeah.
pretty
You know?
cool.
Yeah. So, things like that have been really, really neat opportunities, but all the travels, definitely.
Man, we've talked about so much, man, over the past 30 minutes. What would you like to add? Is there anything we haven't touched on that you'd like to add? Maybe to the conversation to someone's listening, thinking about joining the Army National Guard, thinking about serving this great country and community?
I guess it just goes back to a little bit on the previous question. I would just say, get over your fear,
right.
because I think fear is what keeps people from taking that leap.
Fear of the unknown.
Yeah, and that it is an unknown. And the thing is it doesn't have to be an unknown, because there are people like Sarnoto out here having podcasts and
I mean, it's,
doing all these things. But talk to some soldiers and really just find out all the opportunities that exist. One stereotype that I really want to push down, if I have that opportunity,
Absolutely.
is
Of
a lot of
course.
people think that, and I'm actually an example where I joined the Guard because I didn't have a lot of great options for myself, right?
Understood.
Right.
So that category exists. But a lot of my peers, a lot of your peers, they were scholar athletes.
yeah.
They were, valedictorians and just people that had a lot of things going for them, and they chose what can they contribute. So I think a lot of people get stuck in, well, I could go do all these other things. Why could I do this? Well, because this will enhance all of those other things.
Right.
And I just want people to know that.
So basically, no matter your background, you can find a home in the Army National Guard.
Absolutely.
That is so amazing. Gentlemen, do you have any other questions for Major Samples?
No.
I do not.
Man, we really appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much for talking to us about your experiences, what you've learned through your service in the Army National Guard. Again, man, thank you so much for coming on. We are not your average Joes. This is episode 4. We have Major Alain Samples, the Deputy Commander of the Indiana Army National Guard Recruiting and Retention Battalion. Until next time, thank you so much.